Shabbat Shalom, my friends. I hope that you all are now lazily recovering from a safe, obviously diminished, but nevertheless truly joyous Thanksgiving. Now, the 12 Thanksgivings that Risa and I observed in Israel were very different from our American Thanksgivings. As much as Israelis love turkey, and they love turkey, it's almost impossible at any season to buy a whole bird. Breasts, legs, wings, of course. A whole bird? Who buys that? You ask the butcher, he says, make an order 2 or 3 months, I'll have it for you. Our Thanksgivings with Gary and Uri Regev, along with an annually reborn Bob the bird. I've always felt that Bob was somehow more phoenix than turkey, but those memories are unforgettable. And of course, the big dinner itself was on Friday evening, not on Thursday. It makes sense. After all, Friday evening was ordinarily, for most people, time for a big, slow, shared dinner every week. So Shabbat and Thanksgiving in Israel were kind of melded together with a dash of cranberry sauce. Now, I'm going to say something I hope won't get me into legal trouble. Up until the 1990s, it wasn't easy to find cranberry sauce in Israel. So in the 70s and 80s, Risa and I often smuggled cans of cranberry sauce into Israel for our Anglo friends. I hope that the statute of limitations has expired on that by now. I own a book of Thanksgiving prayers printed in Israel, in Hebrew. It's for Israelis. It doesn't deal with American Thanksgiving, of course, but it deals with occasions of joy mixed with occasions of profound introspection in ordinary Israeli life. What does it have? Well, the table of contents is like a library of stories. Thanksgiving for an aliyah to the Torah. Great. For having recovered from illness on the occasion of a bar or bat mitzvah. Interestingly, in memory of a fallen Israeli soldier. Also Thanksgiving for everyone in the IDF. And Thanksgiving on the occasion of a son or daughter entering military service. And again, interestingly, a special blessing for anyone who is a prisoner of war or who is still listed as missing. Ordinary life in Israel wrapped in prayers of thanksgiving. I wonder if we Americans were to assemble a shared book of specific Thanksgiving prayers for 2020, what prayers might we include? Recovery from illness? Thanksgiving for having food or medical insurance or a stable source of income? For clean air, pure water, if we have that? To need and to want to give thanksgiving is surely universal, but life presents a shifting menu of that which is at any given moment most significant to us. We go on. Our Sedra is VAYETZE, Genesis 28:10 and following. With so much happening in the world around us, we can easily, unintentionally disconnect from these powerful and wonderful Genesis narratives. Sulam mutzav arza. There's Jacob. Ladder settled on the earth, reaching heavenward. Ladder, angels ascending and descending. At the very end of our Sedra, and many people don't pay attention, it's really at the end of the Sedra. When Jacob and his now large and affluent family are returning to the promised land, Canaan, they are greeted once again by a group of angels. Not the ones that Jacob will wrestle with. That's next week. Our rabbinic teachers use this book ending of Jacob's angelic visitors to create one of the earliest theological pillars of Zionism, if such a thing even exists. Jacob was fleeing initially in our Sedra from the land of promise. He has a vision of angels ascending, descending. And then years later, Jacob's returning to the land of promise. Lo and behold, more angels. This biblical theology of Zionism asserts that every nation on earth has its own protecting angel. But the land of Israel, uniquely among all lands, is also protected by a special cluster of angels. So when you enter the land of Israel, they greet you. When you depart the land of Israel, they leave you. But inside the land of Israel, the people of Israel and the land are connected. The people with its protecting angel and the land with its protecting angels. Thus, when land and people are together, heaven protects them both. That's a great thought, and someday I may write about that. Now, there's a struggle among contemporary Jewish liturgists, those talented and very gifted artists who craft new and reshape old prayers. Most of us, I have to admit, don't spend much time looking at the achievements of this rather arcane art. I get that. But every once in a while, those liturgists create something which is a little bit jarring, a little bit troubling. Follow me. The silent devotion, the Amida, the Shemona Esrei, the so-called 18 benedictions, speaks in the traditional Siddur of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They keep the men front and center. That's their style. But non-Orthodox texts add Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And that's the way we think it ought to be. Both Sarah, Abraham, and so forth. Now, no one ever puts Isaac after Jacob. That would be absurd, right? Isaac comes before, is his father, before Jacob, okay? When it comes to Leah and Rachel, things are strangely different. Many North American Reformed prayer books list Rachel before Leah. But the brand new and, I must admit, wonderful Israeli Reformed prayer book restores matter to their proper chronological order, putting in Leah ve Rachel. Leah, after all, was the older sister. She suffered. Shai Held laments the treatment that Leah has received over the ages. Rachel is beautiful. Leah is considered to be of weak eyes, which means, forget what it means, weak eyes. Jacob wants to marry Rachel. He gets Leah, has to work 7 more years to marry his beloved Rachel. Can you imagine the humiliation Rachel that Leah was living with? Did anyone pay attention other than the women's rabbinic commentary? Does anyone pay attention to the pain that Leah was living with as we blithely go on celebrating Jacob's working to be able to marry Rachel? So Leah and Yaakov have children. Rachel is barren. Leah achingly prays after the birth of son 1, son 2, son 3, that now Jacob will start loving her. That doesn't happen. And through the names Leah gives to her sons, you feel her pain, her frustration, her isolation, her humiliation. But then, unexpectedly, Leah names her 4th son Yehudah. The word Yehudah from the same root for thanksgiving. Yehudah, a source of thanksgiving. What's happened? Leah is embracing the true blessings in her life, not turning a blind eye to the pain. She embraces the real blessings, but she will not be held hostage any longer by her husband's preference for her sister. Life doesn't end up getting any better for Leah. Even at the time of her death, yes, Yaakov buries her properly, but at the moment of his birth, her death, her burial, he doesn't even mention that she's his wife. Held quotes a Talmudic figure who asserts that Leah is the first person in the Bible to publicly, openly embrace thanksgiving, even in the midst of a life of degradation and of pain, sorrow, when her heart is broken. Leah lifts up her head and recognizes the blessings that she has indeed received. Now, Rachel's life is, of course, not a life of unmixed joy. She stole her father's household gods and was forever troubled by this, a weird event. She is barren for many years, and she is jealous of Leah and Leah's children. Then Joseph is born, Yosef. Beautiful Yosef, and then Binyamin. But with Binyamin's birth, Rachel dies. And she was never buried in the ancestral cave in Machpelah. Over the succeeding generations, the rabbis chose over and over again to favor Rachel, so that whenever genealogies are recited in traditional liturgy, Rachel's name precedes Leah. We're trained to favor Rachel. On this holiday of Thanksgiving, let's give a shout out to the woman who had the strength to appreciate her life even in the midst of profound challenges. Leah lifted up her identity, lifted up her soul, even in the midst of profound, lasting challenges. She changed her identity from that of being just somebody's wife. She found herself. She found reasons for joy. She gave thanks. Leah has much to teach us about doing more than just surviving pain. And so on this day and this weekend, we embrace Leah with gratitude. Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful week filled with occasions for saying thank you.